Okay, Shabbat Shalom. This is on. So I know that we've got one person streaming. We've got a small crowd here. I can't see you, but if you want to stand up, let's see.
Who is it? Can you see?
No.
Hi.
We're also delayed,
Oh, we're
so you might not be.
Okay.
There you are.
There I am. Okay.
So we've got a small crowd here too. So, but we're going to go ahead and pray, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay. So if you could, I don't know how well you know the tunes, but if you could help me, like, especially with like the repetition.
Sure.
Do we? All right, so we'll begin on, we'll do some psalm singing because we like psalms, gets us into the mood. So we'll start on page 10. Yedid nefesh shav harachaman mishachav dach el ritzonach yarutz avdach kemo ayal yishtachaveh mul hadarach ki yetrav lo yedidutach mino fetzu v'chol ta'am hadur na'eziv ha'olam nafshi cholat ahavatach ana el narefana la v'harod la noam zivach as titchazek v'titrapeh v'haita lach shivchat olam v'tik yehemu rachamecha v'chus na'al ben ohavach ki ze kama nichsaf lirot b'tiferet uzeach ana eli machmad libi chushana ve'al titalam ki galena ufros chaviv alai et sukat shelomach ta'ir eretz mikvodach nagila v'nismecha bach maher ahuv kiva mo'en v'choneni ki me'olam yala lai 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 yala lai 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 yala lai 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 yala lai lai yala lai 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 yala lai 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 yala lai 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 lai. Oh, lovely. Well, I'm so glad you came. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Thank you. We're on page 11. Let's read this responsively. How's that sound? All right. Let us go and sing to Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God, raising our voice in song.
Great is Adonai, a greater sovereign than all other deities. God's hands form the earth's deep mountain crests too, are God's work. The sea is God's, but God made it. Dry land was fashioned by God's hands.
Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands.
If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hardened like the
For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, 'These are people whose hearts have gone astray. They don't know my way.' So in anger I swore they would not enter my rest." And still, even though we hear that from God, we still sing to God. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai baruch shemo, basru miyom leyom yeshuato, sapru v'goyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim niflotav, ki gadol Adonai, hulal me'od, norahu, al kol Elohim yailai, ki kol Elohei ha'amim elilim, va'adonai shamayim asa, hod v'hadar lefanav, oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho, havu l'Adonai mishpachot amim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kivod shemo, se'u mincha, uva'u lechatzrotav yailai, hishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh, chilu mipanav kol haaretz, imru v'goyim Adonai malach, afti kontevel baltimot, yadin amim b'mei sharim, yismachu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz, yiram hayam u'melo'o, ya'alo sadai, v'chol asher bo yailai, az yiranenu kol atzei ya'ar, lifnei Adonai kiva, kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel betzedek, ve'amim be'emunato, yalai la lai lai, yala la la lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai. Page 15. And we'll once again read responsively in the English. Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, the many distant lands rejoice.
Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine. Righteousness and justice secure God's throne. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers round about.
Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth watches and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth.
Heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory.
Worshippers of idols be shamed for praising false gods. All that is deemed supreme bow before God.
Zion hears of it and rejoices. The cities of Judah exult, and you, Adonai, pass judgment.
You, Adonai, are above all that is earthly, exalted over all that is worshipped as divine.
Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the lives of the faithful, saving them from the hands of the sinful.
Light is sown for the righteous, and joy for the upright. Rejoice in Adonai, you righteous people, and thank God as you pronounce the divine holy name. Just trying to think of a tune for this one. Page 17. Let's do... Let's read responsively in the English. How about that? A psalm. Sing to Adonai a new song, for Adonai has wrought wonders. God's right hand and holy arm have brought deliverance.
God declared deliverance. As nations looked on, God's righteousness was revealed.
God dealt faithfully and kindly with the house of Israel. The very ends of the earth saw our God's saving power.
Call out to Adonai, all the earth. Break out in joyful singing. Sing to Adonai to the music of the lyre. Lyre and voices making music together. Horns and shofar cries. Trumpet the presence of the sovereign Adonai.
Let the sea and all that is in it roar, the earth and all who inhabit it thunder. Let rivers clap hands while mountains sing in harmony. Greeting Adonai, who comes to judge the earth, judging the world with justice and the nations with truth.
Liar or mirror?
Liar.
Liar.
Yes. We'll continue on 19 through 20. We're going to read that silently. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Page 21. Mizmor LeDavid, Havu Ladonai b'nei Elim, Havu Ladonai, Kavod va'oz Yailai, Havu Ladonai, Kevod Shemoch Yishtachavu Ladonai, B'hadrat Kodesh, Kol Adonai al Hamayim, El HaKavod Hirim. Adonai al Maim Rabim, Kol Adonai Ba'koach Yailai, Kol Adonai Behadar, Kol Adonai Shover Arazim, Vaishaber Adonai et Arzei Halbano, Vayar Gidem Kmo Egel. Levanon Vesirion Kemo Ven Re'emim Yailai, Kol Adonai Chotzev Lahavotesh, Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Cholel Ayalot. Vayechesof Ye'arot Uvhechalo Kulo Omer Kavod Yailai Adonai Lama Bo Yashav Vayeshev Adonai Melech Le'olam Adonai Oz Le'amo Yitain Adonai Yevarech Et Amo Vashalom Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai lai. Page 22. So sometimes we skip this section, sometimes we read through it, and today we'll read through it. We'll read responsibly in the English. If you would, may your mighty right hand undo the knot that ties us up. Almighty, if you would, guard as the apple of your eye those who seek your unity.
Bless them, cleanse them, have compassion on
Mighty, Holy One, in your abundant goodness, guide your people.
Alone exalted, turn to your people to invoke your holiness.
Listen to our pleas, hear our cries, knowing the hidden depths within us.
Praise be the name of the one whose glorious sovereignty is forever and ever.
I have to say, as I was reading that first section, if you would, like it sounds very passive aggressive. If you would, may your right hand please untie the knots that bind us. So I think, depends on who. I'm just looking at the Hebrew. Ana b'choach. The Hebrew is much different. The Hebrew is more like pleading. Ana, in your please, in your great strength of your right hand, will you please free us from this distress? And instead we get, if you would. Well, it's who translated it for sure. All right. Actually, I wonder if there's something in the side. It's a mystical prayer. It's Kabbalistic. I don't know, but I don't know who translated it. That's the real question. The mystic, the Kabbalists, they're men. Yeah. All right. So here's what I think we'll do is I think we'll sing Lecha Dodi. And then, if you're up for it, there's some really cool stuff in this week's Torah portion. Would you be up for doing a bit of that?
Sure.
Okay. And for whoever is on stream with us, I'll make it so that it works for you too. I'm watching it right now. We've got. I wonder if I'm the one person on the stream. Well. Yes, I think I am the one person on stream. Okay, so we'll maybe be a little more intimate with it then. Okay, but let's do Lecha Dodi. Any particular tunes that you all like?
I only know one.
What's that one? There's like a million, so it's hard to. Okay, let's. Well, yeah, there's so. Let's see. Let's try this one. I just had one in my mind that is the one that I sang growing up. All right, let's do that one.
And then there's a slap. A clap or a slap.
Some of them. All right, let's try this one because you've sung it, so now I've got it in my head. Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad hishmianu El hamiyuchad Adonai echad Ushemo echad l'shem multiferet ve'litila Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha ki hi mekor haberacha merosh mikedem nesucha sof maaseh b'machshavat tchila Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela Mikdash melech ir melucha kumitzei Mitoch ha'afecha rav lach shevet Be'emek ha'habecha vehu yachamol alaychem lam Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabela Hit na'arim me'afar kumi livshi bigdei Tifar techyami al yad ben Ishai Beit halach mikorva el Nafshi gala Lecha Dodi likrat kala Penei Shabbat nekabela Hi toreri, kiva orech, kumi ori, uri, shir daberi kavod Adonai, alayich nigla. All right, let's find another tune. All right, let's try this one. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pene Shabbat nekabela, lo tevashi velo tikami, ma tishtochachi uma tehemi, bach yechesu ani eami, venivnata ir altila, lecha dodi, likrat kala, Pene Shabbat nekabela, v'hayulim shisa shosayich, v'rachaku kol mevalayich, yasis alayich Elohayich, kimsos chatan akala lecha dodi, likrat kala. Pene Shabbat nekabela, yamin usmol tifrotzi, ve'et Adonai ta'aritzi, al yadish ben parti, ve'nismecha ve'nagila lecha dodi, likrat kala, and we rise. Pene Shabbat nekabela, and we'll face the door to welcome the Sabbath bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uvtzola, toch emunei am segula, Boi chala, lecha dodi, likrat kalam, pene Shabbat nekabela. All right, well, we're going to end our formal service here. Thank you for singing with me. And instead, let's go to, I'm going to close this. Okay. And we'll take out the Eitz Chaim, our Eitz Chaim book. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of text study. All right. So, and I'll use the microphone just so you can all hear me, just in case that one is somebody else and not me. All right, so we are in the second Torah portion of Numbers. This is Parshat Naso. Okay, so I'm just going to find the sections that I want to look at. All right, so one of the pieces within Naso, we get like a lot of laws about the Jubilee, which is, the Jubilee is like the 50th year. So every 7 years you have Shemitah year, and then 7 years of 7 years is the Jubilee year. So you have like extra laws for it. Usually has to do with agriculture, specifically in the land of Israel. But eventually, actually, hold on. For some reason, I didn't think that made sense. I was in Bakukotai for some reason. Sorry, everyone. Okay, here we go. This makes more sense. Okay, so we are on page 791. 791. And what we find here is a census, right? It's the book of Numbers, so we're like constantly taking censi. And what we find is that Let me see if I can find the exact place. Let's see. Give me 1 second. And the women and the children. So this is something that, let's see if I can find it. And we find this like throughout the Tanakh, because whenever they do a census, it's about men. So when the Israelites left Egypt, right, the Torah says that there were 600,000, but it wasn't 600,000, it was 600,000 men. So the women weren't counted in there. We do find that they're counted in the amount of people who are standing at Sinai, right? You are standing here, and all people past and future, which includes women.
So children, is that under 13 or?
This here, it's under, I think it's under 20, because 13 is medieval, and so 20 is when, like they're conscripted into the army, and so that's when adulthood begins, is 20. Mm-hmm. What's that? Mm-hmm. In the Torah. Right, that's medieval though. Yeah, so it's kind of fascinating, like our conception of what adulthood is, because 13 is medieval, which makes sense. Like that's when you're going to be maybe getting married. That's when you're going to be like puberty. It's when you're going to be taking on more responsibilities in the house. We also think about medieval as when the Crusades are happening. So there's a lot of like, we have to reimagine what adulthood is, because suddenly children are having to like take over the household because their parents are being killed in the Crusades. And that too, right? You have to get married younger because you're gonna die sooner, right? And then when we get to like, I think this is so fascinating. When you get to like, when the gates of the ghetto, not the World War II ghetto, but the like early 1800s, 18th century. There we go. The early 1700s, the Jews are suddenly allowed to like join modernity, sort of, right? There had been this push for Jews to not be separated physically from the rest of the community, because before it was like, you're not German, you're a Jew in Germany, right? You're not French, you're a Jew in France. And so as Enlightenment, right? When Enlightenment comes, there's this idea that all men are created equal, and that includes the Jews. For the first time, Jews are considered like men and therefore equal. And so they join modernity, and there's this like sudden understanding that, like, wait a second, our kids are going to high school, and they're not becoming adults at 13 because they still have another 4 years to go, and then they have, then they're going to be in university, God willing, afterwards. So there's the creation of confirmation, which is still really big in the Reform movement, not so much in conservative movement, but confirmation is this like modern response to modernity, which says we'll still have B'nai Mitzvah because we want to connect to our tradition that Jewish adulthood begins at 13, but we also recognize that actual adulthood in this time period begins at like 16 or 17. So we'll have like another coming of age ceremony that's connected to our reality, and that's where confirmation is created, which is fascinating. I think it's so cool. Yeah, absolutely. Right, because who were the the Europeans, Christians. And then when we come here to America, it's not the Catholics, it's the Protestants that we follow, right? Why do we sit in pews? Because the Protestants sat in pews. Why do a lot of, not so much anymore, of course, but a lot of Reformed communities had organs? Because the Protestants had organs. Right? Yeah. Yeah. It's so fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah.
It was from the Enlightenment, so Catherine the Great, part of that.
There you go. Have you been watching the show The Great?
I just started.
Oh, it's so good. The new season just came out, and I don't have Hulu yet. I don't have Hulu anymore. I'm gonna have to get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good show.
It's really good. If you have Hulu and you watch The Great, it's not on cable. It's on it's on the internet. Either way. Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyway, so we have this census where we're counting the people from age 30 to 50 who were subject to service for work relating to the tent of meeting. So these are people who are really working to create the tabernacle. Eventually, they're going to dedicate it in this Torah portion. But there's one piece that I think is really fascinating, because we have, on 796, we have a lot of forbidden sexual relationships. So again, there's a gendered piece of what women are allowed to do, what men are not allowed to do, which is not always the same thing. Right, this is when we get the idea of sota, which is a very strange ritual. It's sort of like a witch trial. So if a woman is, this is page 797, so maybe I'll just talk about this because it's very fascinating. So if a woman is accused of adultery, let's see. Oh, here, it starts on 796. Let's see. So a man's wife has gone astray and broken faith with him, in that a man has had carnal relationships with her, unbeknown to her husband, and she keeps it a secret, right? Adultery. That she has defiled herself without being forced. So that's an important piece, is that this rape does not fall into this. There is an understanding that there's a culture where women are taken against their will, but this is not the case here. And there's no witnesses. So she comes forward, or he finds out somehow, but there's no witness. And a fit of jealousy comes over him, and he's so wrought up about the wife who has defiled herself. Or if he is wrought up about his wife, although she has not defiled herself. So suddenly it becomes unclear. This guy, this husband, is freaking out. I think my wife cheated. I really suspect that, right, he's just jealous, which we also know for the 10 Commandments. Is this coveting? I mean, you're not supposed to covet your neighbor's possessions, but anyway, he's he can't sleep at night. He just thinks about it. Every time he looks at her, he gets angry. There's no proof that she's done anything, one thing or the other, but he's just we've all been there, right? It goes over and over in our head, and then we can start freaking out. So what does he do? He takes his wife to the priest, and he brings, as an offering, right, because you always bring an offering, 1/10 of ephah of barley flour. It has to be dry, so don't put any oil on it. No frankincense, right? You're not making it smell good for God, because it's a grain offering of jealousy, a grain offering of remembrance, which recalls wrongdoing. So that's not a nice offering. He doesn't know. He thinks there is. But perhaps the wrongdoing is the jealousy. I don't know. So what happens? The priest brings her forward and has her stand before the Lord. The priest takes some holy water and some dirt from the ground, and he puts the dirt into the water, but it's holy dirt, right? Because it's in the tabernacle, this dirt. After he has made the woman stand before the Lord, the priest shall bear the woman's head and place upon her hands the grain offering of remembrance, which is a grain offering of jealousy, which is already very demeaning to the woman to uncover her head, right? And in the priest's hands shall be the water of bitterness that induces the spell. So something magic is happening. The priest shall adjure the woman, saying to her, "If no man has lain with you, if you have not gone astray in defilement while married to your husband, be immune to harm from this water of bitterness that induces this spell. But if you have gone astray while married to your husband, and you have defiled yourself, namely, i.e., if a man other than your husband has had carnal relations with you," and then there's says the priest, right? This is when the priest administers the curse, right? Before it was a spell, but now it's a curse. "May the Lord make you a curse and an imprecation among your people," right? Like an example among your people, "as the Lord causes your thigh to sag and your belly to distend." So this is going to cause physical changes to her body. Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There is a theory that this is plan B. Like the pill plan B, sort of, except in a more negative, humiliating sense, which is that, or either plan B or an abortion, because something is happening to her body due to the relationships. "May this water that induces the spell enter your body, causing the belly to distend and your thigh to sag, and the woman shall say, Amen, Amen." So here in the bottom, see it says thigh to sag. It says there's a disagreement among scholars concerning the significance of these symptoms. Thigh probably is a euphemism for the procreative organs and refers here to a miscarriage. So, yeah, so this is an abortion, right? This is an induced miscarriage. But it's humiliating, right? And she's not being punished for being pregnant, right? The punishment is for adultery, because, well, if it was just his jealousy, nothing would happen, right? If it turns out that he was right and she was committing adultery and committed adultery at the right time to get pregnant, which if she's observing Nida, then the only time that she would have sex. That's true. What if, right, we don't know. What if this was a legitimate baby that was from him?
Maybe nothing happened to any of them because what the grains do to cause you to have an abortion.
Well, it's not the grains, right? He's picking up dirt. And yeah, the grains are just on her head, like a humiliating hat. Right, and exactly, yeah. So that's the other part, is if there is a witness, then there's a whole other set of laws about what to do for both men and women, right? There has to be not just one witness, there has to be multiple witnesses. So the guy who's watching them, cheat, he has to go run and grab somebody else to also watch it. Yeah, but it's...
What a time to be alive.
Right? Okay, so let's see what happens. The priest shall put these curses down in writing and rub it off into the water of bitterness. So he puts the dirt into the water, makes the water bitter. He writes down a curse on like parchment or whatever, papyrus or whatever they have. And then he takes some of the water and he like rubs it in, which is like sealing the curse, right? We find things like that all over the ancient Near East. There's, on an aside, there were a lot of, in archaeological digs, they would find bowls that had like curses written on them that were turned upside down. This is not an Israelite thing. This was from another culture. And they were like, what are all these like bowls doing outside in a very intentional place? And they found out that these were like protection. These are either protection spells or curses against people. So something like this is not so uncommon in the larger culture because we don't live in a bubble. Okay, so he does this like special magic, and then he is to make the woman drink the water of bitterness that induces the spell, so that the spell-inducing water may enter into her to bring on bitterness. Then the priest shall take from the woman's hand, she has it in her hand, not on her head, sorry, the grain offering of jealousy, elevate the grain offering before the Lord, and present it on the altar. So right, it goes from her hands to the altar. The priest will scoop out of the grain offering a token part of it and turn it into smoke on the altar. It's a burnt offering. Last, he shall make the woman drink the water. So I guess he does that twice.
It's like exorcism. Yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
Scale to enough. You're going to tell me something you've been hiding.
Right, and
Yeah.
what was I just? Oh, this was a fiction podcast called the Magnus Archives, like a horror podcast, and the one that I just listened to was talking about this priest who like goes around and does exorcisms, and what he says is like, I don't really know if I'm doing anything actually, but I know that I'm making the people feel safer. And so it just becomes like a, what's the word when you get a pill, but it's not a real placebo, right? It's a placebo effect. So I don't know. So down here it's really interesting. So they say, right, he is to make the woman drink the water. They say it twice, before the ritual and after. And here in the bottom here it says, the offering of the sacrifice precedes the drinking of the potion. So he takes the priest takes the grain, burns it on the altar, and then she has to drink it. The reason that it was said first, says whoever the editor is of this, the Rabbinical Assembly, David Lieber, says that it's because when we say it first, we're anticipating what's going to happen later. Okay, so that's where we are. Questions?
Wait a minute, okay.
Yeah.
So, at 28, but if the woman has not defiled herself and is pure, she shall be unharmed and able to retain seed. Seed, what seed?
Yeah. I mean, Zara, that's...
If she's pregnant, then she won't have a miscarriage. If it's the husband's seed.
Right. I wonder if also, let's see, so once he has made her drink the water If she has defiled herself by breaking faith with her husband, the spell-inducing water will enter into her to bring on bitterness so that her belly soul is shamed. And the woman shall become a curse among her people. But, right, if the woman has not defiled herself. So either she is like visibly pregnant and the husband is like, I don't think that's mine.
Yeah,
Let's go figure it out.
that's what it sounds like.
I mean, how many times does this happen? We're like, it's like a witch trial, right?
Right.
Whether you're innocent or not, you're going to have to drink this potion, which will probably 100% of the time induce a miscarriage. So even if you're fine, like even if you were loyal and you're being accused falsely, you're still, like, you'll lose either way.
Yeah.
It's very unfair to women. Unless we believe, what's that?
Or maybe he thinks she's pregnant, but she's very bloated.
Right, maybe she's just like about to get her period.
Yeah.
But
There's so many things that it could be.
right, and then the how do I want to say this? It's almost like there's two sides of the spectrum. One is either she's going to lose either way because, like, if you're trying to, induce an abortion and the way to do it's going to work. On the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, you have, no, this is what God tells us to do. And if God says that if she's innocent, nothing will happen to her, then that's what's going to happen. Then this won't hurt her at all. But it will if she is guilty. And so you kind of have these two extremes, but they're both really unfair to women, right? What? Yeah.
But in this case, she actually did
Mm-hmm.
lie down with another husband, as they call it, with somebody other than her husband. But she's the only one who knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they scare her enough, with all that water and earth and whatever, she may actually confess because she's so scared.
Right.
And a priest for a woman, a priest is something like God, very important. It's like being God
Yeah.
for a woman at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can imagine. We've talked to. I mean, I learned this in school, in like elementary school, when talking about the Salem witch trials, right? We're going to tie a brick to your leg. If you drown, you're not a witch. If you float, you are a witch. Either way, you're going to die, right? I mean, it's kind of the same idea. There's always like that little bit of hope that it's going to work, right? That God will save the woman who is innocent, or that divine intervention will save the woman with the brick tied to her leg. But
Why should God save her? She did after all.
but if she, not necessarily,
She did commit adultery.
not necessarily. The husband thinks that she committed adultery.
I don't think, but she did commit adultery, wasn't she?
Mm-mm.
If not,
If, right. If she did it, her belly will set, will whatever.
the whole thing starts with if
The whole thing is what's the word?
it's not facts or it's not like God.
It's just some guy who is really like working himself up, or he's obsessed, or he's probably like surrounded with some other guys who are like egging him on, right? So let's keep going. So this is the ritual in cases of jealousy. What's the word here? Knaot, jealousy. When a woman goes astray while married to her husband and defiles herself, or when a fit of jealousy overcomes a man and he is wrought up over his wife. The woman shall be made to stand before the Lord, and the priest shall carry out all this ritual with her. The man shall be clear of guilt, but that woman shall suffer for her guilt. So the issue I have here too is, what's the punishment for the man if he's wrong? Like, because the only option that they understand here is that if she's guilty, she'll suffer and he will be cleared. But what happens if it's the other way? What, she gets humiliated, but she gets to still be married to him and still have his baby?
Right. I guess
Yeah.
that she just has to, I guess that she just has to swallow it and
Mhm.
follow suit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once he questions her fidelity,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe that's a loss for her either way.
Right. So whether or not she was adulterous or not, it doesn't really matter because he's been questioning her. He's already ruined her reputation, right?
And he brings her to the priest.
Innocent women don't get brought before the priest. In the ideal world. But we probably have a lot of women. Well, so here's the other thing, right? Do we know that this actually happened? I don't know.
It starts with if. The whole
If.
section starts with if.
Right. So we don't know that, like, if this was more of a preventative law, right? Don't be adulterous because then you're going to have to go through this whole thing. You know, maybe this was just a warning, but it
It'll humiliate you if you do that.
right, but it wasn't actually done, because a lot of what the biblical text is how do we have a stable society? And if scaring people away from adultery is the way to do that, then fine.
So we don't actually
But-
have a record of this happening, we just know that it could happen. It
Right.
could have happened.
Right. Is this somebody's imagination, or is this something where, like, it was practiced and then they wrote it down? I don't know.
Or did they tell when women were being prepared to be wives, were they taught that this could happen? And then that way, when they did get married, they would avoid this at all costs.
Right. Yeah, that could be too. It's sort of like we tell my Adina this, the oldest one. We say, if you don't brush your teeth, what's going to happen to your teeth? They're going to start hurting. They're going to turn black. They're going to fall out. Like, it's going to be really awful. Her teeth are fine, but it kind of like scares. I mean, we're not lying to her, but we're kind of like scaring her into. It makes me sound like a bad parent,
No,
but
because I told mine that if they didn't brush their teeth, they'd get snails in their mouth.
oh no.
So,
It's a way to control the women.
Yeah,
it's a way
absolutely.
to control.
Mhm.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Adulterers, I'm going to take you to the priest, and he's going to make you stand before the Lord.
Mhm.
He's not just the priest, it's the Lord.
Right.
So this way, make sure you're not an adulteress. And I'm sure through history there were many adulteresses.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably more men than women. You know, there's this is a kind of going away but coming back is, when you find people who are like really sort of homophobic, you find out that they themselves are maybe identify as gay, but they're just scared of it.
Yeah.
So maybe there's this idea of like, these men are just really adulterous, but they're scared of that, and so they make laws
So
sort of
what happened to them?
addressing it, right? Also, it makes me think what you were saying, Grace, is that, like, not only would mothers say, okay, when you get married, don't commit adultery because all this stuff will happen, but stop talking to that guy. you know that guy you work with? Stop talking to him, or I'm going to have to take you to the priest over there, right? Who's that guy coming around here, right? Who are you texting, right? Yeah. Yeah. And you're right, like this is not a ritual for a non-jealous husband. Like it explicitly says this is an offering of jealousy. But it makes me think like who here's my question, which I don't know the answer to, but who is seen as wrong in this situation? Like, is it that there's an innocent woman who is being brought and the man now is labeled as jealous? And that's bad? Like, it's not good to be jealous. But is it the woman who is seen in a negative light because she's always under suspicion?
I think back then it would be the woman who was punished and seen badly, but in today's world it would be, we would say, oh, man, he's jealous, he has no confidence, he's not sure of himself, and that would make us, that would turn us off to his personality. But back then, I think that just women were not seen as equal people. Yeah.
There's, I'm just reading this bottom part here on page 796, because it says, the ordeal of the sota, right, the woman suspected of betraying her husband, involves a strange and, at first reading, demeaning ritual, which tells me that they're going to tell me why it's not demeaning. At one level, it reflects the immense seriousness with which the Torah regards marital infidelity. All other transgressions recorded in the Torah can be put right. If a man steals, he can return what he stole. If he withholds wages, he can pay him. But one who cohabits with a married woman is unable to restore her marriage to what it was previously. This is from Numbers Rabbah, which is like a midrashic text. But they've kind of misquoted this, right? They say one who cohabits with a married woman is able to restore her marriage. That's not in the biblical text at all. That's not even, I don't know. Okay.
Somebody misread something.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's interesting is that he makes her drink the water of bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
But the woman could have become very bitter towards her husband after all of this going on.
Oh, sure. It's still within her. It's just expressed in a different way.
The relationship between the two may have changed considerably.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Rashi connects sota with the word shote, or fool, reflecting the Talmudic dictum that no one sins unless overcome by foolishness. If we could clearly see the consequences of what we are tempted to do, we would never sin. People sin in a spirit of folly, losing control of their reasoning faculty. The Talmud tells us that the ordeal of the sota worked only in an age when people believed in its power to expose the guilty and exonerate the innocent. Right, if we don't think it's going to work, then it doesn't work. But if we actually think it's going to work, then we're going to do the ritual. In the more cynical period of the Second Temple, it had to be discontinued. So basically, by the time we get to the Second Temple, which is like 1st century CE is when it's rebuilt, when it's destroyed. It's destroyed in the 1st century CE. So by the time we get to like a few hundred BCE up until CE, we have already understood that this magic doesn't work, that it's not a good indication of whether somebody has committed adultery or not, so they stop doing, if they ever did it. But basically what the Talmud is saying is that those people in the biblical times were just foolish. They didn't understand. They thought it would work, which is why they did it. But by the time we get to Second Temple, we're smarter and we're wiser, and we know that this is a foolish ritual. Okay, let's see. It would seem that the sages understood the ordeal of Sota less as a way of ferreting out adulteresses and more of a way of proving to the husband that his suspicions were groundless.
Okay, so then we're saying, seeing that the husband is considered the fool for being jealous.
Right.
So he turned it.
Right. A man who might not be satisfied with the court's finding of not guilty in the absence of proof would have to accept the judgment of heaven, because it is unlikely that the ritual would produce a guilty verdict, unless through the psychosomatic reaction of a truly guilty wife. Okay, so what they're saying, right, is like you put some dirt in some water and she drinks it, nothing's gonna happen. Like she's gonna be fine.
Right. Especially since so many pregnant women eat dirt with pica.
Right.
Because they crave it while they're pregnant.
Also, I remember when I was pregnant with Adina, it was like she was born on her due date. So the last week I started drinking this like raspberry leaf tea, and it tasted like dirt. And I was like, this is disgusting. So like I get it, people just eat dirt sometimes. So right, what they're saying is, right, it's never gonna work. Actually, the purpose of this ritual is to prove that the man is jealous and foolish. The only reason that it would work is if the woman is so overcome with guilt that the stress induces a miscarriage. So its purpose may well have been to alleviate the husband's suspicion and restore domestic harmony. In an ideal world.
Yeah, if the woman had no feelings.
Right.
Right.
Let's see, we could,
Nothing happened.
yeah, right, and then just go back to normal life.
Okay,
We can understand the promise of verse 28, which is, if the woman has not defiled herself, she'll be unharmed. She will be able to retain seed, as foreseeing that she will be restored to a life of love with her husband. But even if the ordeal and a subsequent pregnancy turn the husband's heart back to his wife, what will it take to restore her trust in him and affection for him?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that was included.
Right. I agree.
You can write a whole play about that.
I'm sure
It would be a really good play.
there's a whole, Talmudic tractate about this, because it's so strange.
It is so strange.
So that's in this week's Torah portion. It's a very complicated, historically wrought ritual that, I don't know.
I'm glad that so long ago that they realized that it didn't come into modern times.
Right.
At least they caught it.
Yeah.
I don't know how very religious people feel about that, because, we're conservative, and there's people who are much, much more religious than we are. How would they feel about it? I mean, there's the man is still the prime person in the family. Marriage of Chabad and, more. It's still the man is the ruler of the house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but I don't think that I haven't read Talmud Sota, so I don't know exactly. But I think that this ritual is just on paper. It's sort of like, the way that I view it is, somewhere in Leviticus, it says, if your son is stubborn and rebellious, you should take him to the gate, like the people who are, like basically before a Beit Din, and tell him, my son is stubborn and rebellious, and they'll stone him to death. But then the Mishnah comes around and is like, yeah, I don't think so. Like, and they basically say, how do we follow this law without following the law, right? So how do we say, we're basically like, so here, like they do like mental gymnastics, right? We say that it has to be a stubborn and rebellious son, so that means a son and not a daughter. It means that it has to be a son, which means not a father, like not an adult. It also means that he has to be like, they just go on and on. Like, it has to have this many pubic hairs, right? And
I remember Rabbi Barnard talking about that at some point.
Yeah, and they kind of like, I did a sermon on it where I had like the magnets.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and so it ends up being impossible to follow the law because there is no situation where you would have every single piece there. Yeah. And I imagine that that's what they do with Sota, is that it just becomes impossible to follow.
It must have been close.
It must have been because Leviticus. We've already passed Leviticus. Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
That was a fun one. So anyway, but that is, I don't know. I like stuff like that. Is just so strange, right? And so like nuanced as far as gender and marriage and laws.
And it's interesting that Satan I can't wait to tell the kids about it.
Yeah.
And see what they have to say about it.
Yeah.
They're rich ones. So.
Sure. And I will say, like, we've only looked really at the Torah, which, as we know, we are not Torahitic Jews, we're Rabbinic Jews, and there's so much more that our tradition has said about Sota that we didn't discuss here. But yeah, that's not the end. That's just the very beginning of the discussion.
Really good.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your first time.
Thank you. I have led up to Lachadodi many times. I haven't done the